Halo 3 is considered by many to be the third game in the Halo trilogy, with it picking up right where Halo 2 left off as you play as Master Chief and try to finish the fight alongside your new dinosaur best friend. If you're nerdy enough to watch videos like this, then I'm assuming that you already know that Halo's hardest difficulty is Legendary. But being an old school Halo veteran myself, 24 years old, regular Legendary isn't hard enough for me anymore, so I wanted to try something even tougher. I'm a frog, and for this video I played Halo 3 LASO, that's Legendary all skulls on. Skulls just being various game modifiers that make the game way harder. There's 13 skulls included in LASO, and I'll explain a few of the more important ones as we go through. So let's hop in. Our journey begins on the level Arrival, where a cutscene starts and I immediately press the A button to skip it. See, one level down already, this isn't so bad. The journey continues on Sierra 117, where you may notice after the black bars go away that you can't see my weapon or HUD, which is stuff like my ammo, my radar, etc. That's because of the blind skull that hides it all. In my Halo 2 LASO video, I was following along with guides the whole time, but for this video, I decided to be a Giga Chat and not look at any guides. I just went off of my own strategizing ability and prior game knowledge. Like here, before the first fight, I remembered from when I did my speedrun video that you can skip a trigger by going up this way. It's a really weird jump though, because your second jump is basically off of nothing. After dropping down, there's a couple enemies, but after killing them, no one else spawns, so doing that jump makes this way easier. I'll now mention the catch skull that makes enemies throw more grenades, because one of the grunts chucked a Hail Mary and somehow stuck me, resulting in my first death of the run. Worth mentioning, every time I die, you'll see me save and quit because of the Iron Skull. On co-op, this makes it so you revert to the last checkpoint when only one player dies. But on solo, this makes it so that if you die, you restart the entire level. I think that's complete BS, but thankfully you can avoid it by just saving and quitting real fast. As the great George Washington famously said, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. One of the most important skulls is the Black Eye Skull, which makes it so your shields don't recharge unless you melee an enemy. And I'm telling you about the Black Eye Skull because my second death happened because I was trying too hard to regen my shields and died to a lone grunt. He survived so many melees from a 7-foot green cyborg man because of the Mythic Skull, which doubles enemy health. But my third attempt, I backsmacked the brute, didn't get stuck by a Willie Mays grunt, killed the rest, and was home free because of the trigger skip. The second area has a lot more enemies, but thankfully is where I also get carbines, making it much easier to kill grunts. And jackals for that matter, because this is where they start showing up. Jackals are annoying because with the Mythic Skull, they don't flinch when you shoot them in the hand, meaning I had to EMP them or figure out some other way to get them to show their stupid bird heads. And with the last skull I'll mention, Tilt, having a plasma pistol was of the utmost importance for killing brutes. Tilt affects weapon balancing and basically just means that human weapons are worthless against shields and brute armor. Here I saved a Marine from a brute. He rewarded me by doing this. For my next trick, I had to shoot jackal snipers from long range without a reticle. It went about how you'd expect. And after getting sniped, I forgot to save and quit, which sent me back to the start of the level. We're off to a tremendous start here, folks. Thankfully, after restarting, I had no problems whatsoever and was able to very easily make it back to the river. This time I approached the river with a new superpower, a piece of tape on my monitor with a black dot where the center of the reticle would be. As you can imagine, this made killing the jackals much easier. When I did Halo 2 LASO, my shields were constantly beeping from being low. I quickly learned in this game that there just isn't a sound for shields being low, at least not on LASO. Sometimes I died because I'd take hits without even realizing my shields were already down. Speaking of dying, for whatever reason at the river, there are a million brutes with the brute shot, and this is where I really started hating the brute shot. I got wrecked over and over again. It was brutal. I died a couple more times until I went into the sniper forest because Bungie heard all your complaints about Halo 2 jackal snipers and said, counterpoint, go fuck. Sergeant Foley whipped out his sword and started rushing at enemies with no regard for his own life. I kept taking my time headshotting grunts and jackals, and we made it to a downed pelican with ammo and a brute that completely jump scared me. In all my years of playing Halo 3, 17, I'd never seen a brute down here before. In an interesting change up, I was killed by a brute with a spiker instead of a brute shot, and after a few more minutes and a few more deaths, we made it to the dam. There are snipers all over the darn, which I focused on, but I was immediately reminded what the real biggest threat in this game is. I'm not calling out anyone specifically, but whoever's idea it was, Marty, to spam brute shot spawns owes me an apology. I found myself in a bit of a pickle where a jackal overcharged me and I wasn't able to melee another one before my next checkpoint. So I had to fight an army of brutes, some of them now with carbines from long range without shields. It is so over. For some reason, Arbiter had a plasma pistol and nothing else, so he wasn't much help here either. Eventually, I was able to take out a few brutes and got rushed by the Chieftain. Hammer Chieftains have predictable attacks and are easy to backsmack, which recharge my shields. We are so back. I went under the bridge downtown and took the brutes head on, which resulted in a death, but thankfully I had another checkpoint. After many more deaths, I was able to conquer the bridge brutes with the help of a grunt being very stupid. That was it for hard stuff this level. It ends with me finding Johnson in a jail cell, then holding out for a little bit. I ended the level with this cool hammer launch that isn't very hard. I ended the level with this cool hammer launch that isn't very hard. And there we go. The Marines give a little fist bump, and that's Sierra 117 in just under 1 hour. Unlike the in-game timer in Halo 2 LASO, this timer is actually reflective of how many minutes of game time each level took, although obviously it doesn't include the time that I'm in the menus after saving and quitting. Level 2 starts with us meeting Commander Key, Skyping our terrifying-looking Admiral, and getting hacked by the Prophet of Truth Social just so we can trash talk. The cutscene ends with the worst line in any Halo game.
Ma'am, squad leaders are requesting a rally point. Where should they go?
To war.
And with that, I was off on my quest to hold off the Covenant invading the base. The first fight just has grunts and jackals. I got stuck, of course, as happens when you fight grunts on LASO. A brute shotter also appeared who I became acquainted with, and by that I mean he killed me. Next up was the hangar where I was tasked with holding out against the Covenant while more waves were flown in on Phantoms. Why don't the Marines just shut the hangar door? Are they stupid? At this point, I was still trying to get my bearings when it came to playing this game LASO. It all just felt weird and I wasn't very good at it. And with my ODST firefight experience from the past, I frankly expected to be better, because late stage firefight is basically just LASO except with the HUD. At one point, I got the hangar enemies down to just one brute. Then I died and had to do it all again. Classic. I restarted and this time was able to clear the hangar, killing all the brutes and a stuck jackal. What is bro doing? I made sure to grab a deployable cover because on the way back to HQ, we get attacked by bug people and there's a turret over here you can drop a deployable cover in front of and camp behind. I can shoot through it, but they can't. The only flaw with this strategy is that I have no defense for an attack from the rear. A couple attempts later, I cleared out all the bugs and it was time for the brute room, which has a ton of brutes. My initial strategy was to hang back and not go through the door, because that lets me keep running back to the last area and grab ammo whenever I run out and just play the long game. I did this for several minutes, slowly picking off brutes until a second group spawned, which included a carbine guy, and I was immediately killed. So that was like 8 minutes of my life down the drain that I'll never get back. After trying this again with limited success, I decided to change up my strategy and rush in. After dying a couple times, I found a pretty good spot where I could get the brutes one at a time, except a lot faster, and after the chieftain whiffed, I was in the clear. Now with the gravity hammer off the chieftain, there was a skip I could do called barrack skip that lets you skip the section with probably the most brutes in the entire game. Back from my Halo 3 speedrun video, I had to learn it. It goes like this. Okay, not like that. More like this. I paused for a second because I thought I was dead, but alas, I made it across and could take the elevator up. Now, there were two downsides to doing this. One, I didn't have the Arbiter or any Marines with me for backup, and two, I only brought a battle rifle and a gravity hammer. I should have brought a plasma pistol in the hammer and then grabbed a battle rifle upstairs, but I didn't think that far ahead because I'm stupid. So this section with too many jetpack routes to count, I had to clear without a plasma weapon. On LASO, and plasma weapons were basically required for killing brutes. I had an invincibility from the chieftain and there were a couple invisibilities, so I had that going for me, but this part really sucked. Some of the brutes had plasma rifles, so I could at least try to use them to take off their armor, but yeah, only having a plasma rifle and a battle rifle against an army of carbine brutes wasn't fun. The strategy I eventually came up with, after backsmacking a few with camo, was to hide down here where the brutes would occasionally pop out solo and give me a chance to kill them. This was slow, but I managed to get them all and could finally advance. The next fight is easy. It's only grunts and jackals, so I just had to get headshots. In the bomb room, I parkoured up on a pipe, hit my active camo, a little bit late, so I got shot at, but was able to run out. There are a lot of enemies outside the door in the next area, so I wanted to take it safe and hang back and then kill them. What I did not realize was that the enemies by the bomb would chase me. So I died, and I was so gobsmacked by this death that I forgot to save and quit. Because of the Iron Skull, me forgetting to do that reset the level, so after making it an hour into the mission, I had to go back to the start and do it all again. Excuse me for a second. Fuck! Before restarting, I first calmed myself by watching a scary movie with my dog. Then it was time to run it back. I killed people in this hallway and traded shots with the jackals. Oh wow, berserking brute, let me just backsmack him. I will say that this time around, I was much more confident with this level. Like, I still died many times, but it wasn't as much of a slog. Like the brute room, I cleared my first try. I grabbed the chieftain's invincibility, but I did not grab his hammer this time. One big change I made was to clear the barracks instead of skipping it, even though it's full of brutes. With how annoying the landing pad was my first run, I wanted to do it this time, not only with the plasma pistol, but also with the help of Arbiter and the Marines I'd rescue in the barracks. I did die in the barracks a few times, but it wasn't that bad. I just had to noob combo all the brutes and take my time. The landing pad was pretty easy now that I had help. I kept running and got a "you up" message from Cortana, killed some guys, completely forgot about a couple Jackal snipers, but thankfully didn't get sniped, armed the bomb, got killed on my run out, but did save and quit this time, and made it to the final elevator. So my second attempt at Crow's Nest as a whole, I got through in a little over 40 minutes. Next up was Savo Highway, Ferret the God's favorite level, which I was told was one of the easiest. Had I been following a guide, I'm sure it would have been, but as previously mentioned, I wasn't, and this level wrecked me. It is pretty much just a driving level, so when I got to the first enemy encounter, I tried just driving past them. That didn't work. My second attempt, I tried killing most of the enemies, then driving past. That also didn't work. My third attempt, I realized I was driving past Jackal snipers on my way here, so I turned around and grabbed a beam rifle, making killing all the enemies up ahead very easy. I used them in the next area too to clear everyone out before driving through that one. In the next area, I faced a wall to grab a gravity lift through it, then it was a matter of dealing with the various enemies populating the area. But rather than confront these problems directly, I drove past them all until I got to a shield gate, which I destroyed and continued on. The grav lift I picked up allowed me to take my Warthog across a gap in the bridge where you're supposed to get out, but like Ryan Gosling, I continued to drive until I crashed and had to save and quit. You're supposed to do a big holdout fight here on foot, but instead my goal was to speed past it and get to the next area where I could hijack a Wraith. This strategy in hindsight was very stupid and I had no success. I followed up this strategic blunder with an even dumber one when I decided to quit driving past everyone altogether and attempt to do the holdout fight. Now, killing enemies in this game on LASO is definitely harder, but it isn't ridiculous, so I was confident. What I didn't realize though is that Bungie decided to spam nothing but brute spawns during this fight, and I was completely overwhelmed. I hate this level and never play it, so I had no memory of this fight being so bad. When I finally did clear out the brutes, Paul Bertone himself gave me a middle finger and spawned in even more, including a bunch of jetpack brutes, which made the second wave even tougher than the first. After many more deaths, I just gave up and ran back to the Warthog off my checkpoint and decided to resume my earlier strategy of jacking a Wraith, which for some reason now is way more pushed up, making it easier to board. It still wasn't easy though. After several more minutes of trying this, I managed to steal the Wraith without dying and advance to the final push. There are a bunch of enemy vehicles far away, so I took my sweet time lining up shots from distance and taking them out. There were a few choppers that I couldn't get from far away, so I did have to push up for them, whatever. But again, this level is really mean, and after I took out the first group, it seemed like another 6 or so spawned in. With the Black Eye Skull keeping my shields from recharging and Mythic giving the choppers double health, I simply just couldn't keep up. I died here so many times. Race strats were not it. So I changed tactics yet again and did what I probably should have just done from the beginning, which is grab a chopper of my own and drive past this area. The problem and why I wanted the Wraith is that there's a whole blockade of brutes to get through. I tried driving through them a couple times like you would on a regular speed run and got destroyed. I next tried stopping and killing all the brutes, which worked fine, until I realized there was still a Wraith on the bridge. I turned my attention towards it, and after completely misjudging this shot on one of my lives, I successfully fisted the Wraith my next attempt and was in the clear. This sucked though. Like, I could kill the brutes with the chopper, but it took forever. And after getting past the blockade, I had a whole nother group to deal with, including a chieftain that I spent a solid 8 minutes putting shots on until I got impatient and drove a little too close, letting him kill me. Let me go grab my Mercer Mayer books. After reloading and killing the last set of brutes again, this time I just rushed the chieftain and gave him the old back smack to finally finish the level. This level that is supposed to be one of the easier ones took me 1 hour and 36 minutes. Is the level actually tough, or is Frog just bad? Discuss. But if you call me bad, I'm banning you. The next level in sequential order, which is the required order, so there's zero reason for me to specify that, is the Storm, where my weapons actually carry over, so I started with a battle rifle and plasma pistol. The plasma pistol doesn't really matter though, since the first fight is just against jackals and grunts. The second hallway where you start getting some brute action is where the challenge truly begins, and I died quite a few times. But as I shot enemies, read chalkboards, and listened to the Money Guy show talk about HSAs in the background, I managed to push past it to the first vehicle section of the level. I would like to mention now that we're reaching the end of my speedrun knowledge for Halo 3. Like, this section, I didn't have really any idea of how to do fast. There's a bunch of ghosts, an anti-air wraith, and one more wraith. The only enemy you're required to take out is the anti-air wraith, but obviously I wanted to kill everything for survivability. After unloading an entire missile pod into the AA wraith with it still kicking, I hopped back in my ghost and just shot it for a bit until it eventually blew up. Then came the other wraith. I didn't want to rush it, so for a couple minutes I just hung back and shot it with the ghost dodging its mortar shots. When I finally killed the pilot, I pushed up. Well, that's embarrassing. I died a few more times in this section since my checkpoint was before I'd blown up either wraith, and this ended up being the hardest part of the entire level for me, which you may be surprised by considering that there's a scarab, but we'll get to that. I used the discarded wraith to my advantage for a second, jumped over a box to avoid a drone spawn, then did the next lake bed where I quickly hijacked one of the 2 AA wraiths, only to discover that my marine friend was trying to bail without me. I probably should have let him drive though, because a bit later I died by trying to drive up a ramp and being completely incapable of it. I died a lot here too. I probably had even more deaths in the other section, but they were faster, so it didn't feel as bad. Eventually though, it was scarab time. I mentioned that we were nearing the end of my speedrun knowledge, but I had one more trick up my sleeve. If you bring a mongoose back here, which has an elastic barrier to get past that blocks the mongoose, so it's actually kind of tricky, you can use it to get past the door and avoid fighting the scarab entirely. There's another section where I had to fight some brutes, whatever, but then I was greeted by the first hunters of the game. Individually, hunters aren't very tough, but they're really tough when there's two of them and you're constantly looking over your shoulder wondering where the other one is, or when a grunt randomly throws a plasma across the map. Surprisingly though, the shotgun melee combo absolutely shreds them even on LASO. We had a few more guys to fight, then I took out a giant AA gun from long range because I'm just that good, and that ended the level. The Covenant opened a portal, a weird ship flew in, Master Chief says words to Arbiter for the only time in the game, and that was the storm in 56:47, just under 1 hour. The next level, Floodgate, which sees you just run back through where I already was, except now with Flood, I was expecting to be really easy. And I was correct. Mostly. I grabbed a hammer at the start to have a melee weapon and quickly learned that it couldn't insta-kill Flood, but still, the run-of-the-mill Flood are really weak in this game and easy to headshot. I was racking up kills quickly and things were going smoothly. This part, there's a few more Flood, but I noticed this box I could jump up that would let me basically run past everyone. One of the Flood just died from cringe. Me and the Arb dog fought through some more good times. Except for this guy who had to kill his whole squad, but sucks to suck. We got some more dino friends who were kinda worthless, but they were trying their best. Through all of this, I literally didn't die. Like, the first 90% of this level is easy even on LASO. Then came the ending. If you've seen one of my previous Halo 3 videos, you already know what I'm gonna complain about: the pure forms. They're the absolute worst. And unless I had a sword, I really couldn't even kill the tank forms. Thankfully, on my third life, I got a sword gift wrapped. Santa deniers in shambles. But the real villains in this story are the ranged forms. They have super high health and deal crazy damage from long range. Thankfully, it seemed like there was only one range form up high and the rest were tanks. We pushed up to the ship, literally the end of the level, and I discovered that the entrance was being guarded by 3 ranged forms. The dervish was pinned down, and if I tried to rush them, I'd be cooked. So I scavenged weapons and put as many shots as I could into them. I didn't have any grenades, unfortunately, but I kept shooting them with everything I had, to the point where all I had left was a single plasma rifle. And after doing this for a couple minutes, I died, and went back to the start of the final area. Yep. My next life, I made a big adjustment, which was to play more aggressive and kill every single pure form I could before they could retreat to the ship entrance and form a defensive line. And it worked. Thankfully, I didn't have any more deaths here and got it that try. So the other death was annoying, but didn't ultimately matter too much. 343 Guilty Spark showed up. Cortana was having a rough time without her SSRIs.
We have to go through the portal. No, damn it.
We go through the portal and 2305 Floodgate. One of the 2 cool cutscenes in the game plays, and we've landed on the Ark for level 6. You start out with the sniper, which unfortunately, because of the tilt skull, is pretty worthless against brutes. So after missing 4 straight shots on a jackal's head, I immediately dropped it for a plasma pistol. A brute shot me with his brute shot, but my second attempt I was able to kill everyone. The next area was rough. I was grenaded and brute shotted and huntered. There wasn't anything too special about it. I just had to kill the enemies and couldn't, cause I'm bad. Pepe point. Eventually, I did just have the idea to run past everyone, which almost worked my first try until a hunter blasted me in the back. After getting through, I looked at the terminal because I couldn't remember if I had the achievement already or not. Mendicant bias. More like, man, I don't care bias. With all my complaining about brute shots, I don't think it can be understated that carbines are also incredibly dangerous. Brute shots can be dodged, carbines on the other hand, not so much. A couple prowlers showed up, and after dispatching the first, for some reason I tried rushing the second head on. It went about as well as you'd expect. In the next part, I only had a mongoose, and my strategy was simple: hijack a chopper and get the HE double hockey sticks out of there. My first attempt saw me successfully get the chopper, only to get killed on my escape. This took several attempts, but I did not get impatient, nor did I rage. Even when I did finally get through, only to get killed by a couple ghosts and realize I didn't have a checkpoint and had to do it all over again. But it was fine. My days of raging at video games
earlier in this video
are behind me. Do I look like I'm annoyed? The next time I got through, I took a detour to make sure I got a checkpoint, which was a good call because these 2 ghosts were nightmare fuel and I died even more times to them. My first strategy was to splatter one and hijack the other, which, yeah, didn't work. The strat that worked was dropping a bubble, hijacking one, waiting for the second to get close, then hijacking it. Easy. The next group wasn't too bad. There's this whole area with a bunch of guys and vehicles, but I just hung back in a chopper and took them out from Jafar. It did take a while though, but I was rewarded for my efforts by a gift from the gods, a tank. The Halo 3 tank is the best tank in the franchise. I have a tendency to change my opinion on this in every new Halo video though, so stay tuned for my Halo Reach LASO video where I say it has the best tank. But yeah, there's this tank section that wasn't difficult at all because I have a Giga tank and could just hang back and shoot everything. This was a lot of fun. We went inside a structure where I activated a bridge, and once back outside on my way to get another tank, I got stepped on. In this section, you're supposed to get a Goshawk and stuff. I've actually never done that and didn't even know that's how it's supposed to go until I started this channel and people told me. I've always just dropped down here and grabbed another tank. So this was once again all easy with the tank until we made it to the Scarab. And unfortunately, there was no way to glitch through a door this time. I had to actually fight it. I still haven't watched any LASO guys as I'm recording this, so if there is a way to skip this fight that I don't know about, then I look forward to reading the 100 comments letting me know. The Scarab fight sucks. It's not so much the Scarab itself as it is the waves of choppers that spawn while I'm trying to kill the Scarab. My third attempt, I actually got on the Scarab, took out its power core, and successfully hijacked one of the choppers to make my escape. But because the chopper is terrible, it flipped and I was killed by the ensuing explosion. Another attempt, I blew up the power core, only to turn the corner and get jump scared by a couple brutes who pelted me with spike grenades like I was back in my freshman year of high school playing dodgeball with seniors. After many attempts and a prayer to Moloch, I finally managed to kill the Skurrob and survive the escape. There was an easy fight up the pyramid. I met up with Arby Sauce and a couple of Marines, and we broke into the Forerunner structure where I assassinated a pissing brute. I respect your time enough to cut to the chase. All of this last section was easy. I had a hang of Halo 3 LASO's Covenant combat at this point, and none of the fights were particularly difficult. The gold chieftains are always a little tricky, and I did get killed once, but my second attempt on this guy, he focused on a Marine for some reason instead of the cyborg death machine they literally refer to as a demon, allowing me to get an easy backsmack. Fun fact, there was a Jackal who tried to overcharge me, so I waited. It turns out that if you just let a Jackal charge his plasma pistol and never show yourself, he'll charge it until he runs out of ammo and can't shoot you anymore. I've been playing this game for 17 years and never knew that. The last fight was easy. I used an active camo and assassinated the chieftain, then turned on all the other brutes. When my camo ran out, I grabbed the chieftain's invincibility, and that was basically it. Some robots show up, Johnson smokes a cigar, Miranda tries too hard to be cool, and that's the arc in 1 hour, 41 minutes, and 47 seconds, the longest so far. The Covenant is one of the Halo levels of all time where you fly in with your elite allies who spray painted their phantoms green, and you start by taking over a beach. This fight is pretty $0, which is what speedrunners refer to tricks as right before they fail them, as I did by dying a couple times. You have a Spartan laser to start, and I used my last shot on the chieftain only for him to survive and then Mountain Dew blast me. My next life, I saved 2 shots for him. He survived those too, but thankfully I was able to punch him in the back. I was out of Spartan laser shots, so I picked up his fuel rod gun and gave it to my passenger Marine so he'd have some extra firepower. I very quickly realized this would not cut it. So I restarted the level, did the beach fight again, and this time saved the laser for the Marine riding shotgun. Between all of this, the $0 beach fight ended up taking about 10 minutes. This part sucks because there were ghosts and I had to exit the Warthog to avoid them, but during that time there was a Wraith volleying shots at us, and as long as the shot was just in our zip code, the Marines would bail from the Warthog. Even like here, when it was so far away that it wasn't even on screen and I took no damage. This was really annoying because then I'd have to get back in the Warthog, then wait for the Marines to get back in the Warthog too, and then I'd die. After several deaths, I had the epiphany to just push up so we were as far away as possible from the Wraiths, could take out the ghosts, and then focus on the Wraiths and newly spawned Prowlers. When we got to the structure, I exited the Warthog and attempted to clear the enemies inside on foot, only for the Marines to cavalierly take charge. Then once inside, I could skip basically everything by just jumping up this way. I died a few times in the Chieftain room, then gave him a little smack, drove like Derek Thomas when he's late for a football game, did the Hornet section, and even though MCC screwed up the flight controls versus the original, this was one of the easiest parts of the entire playthrough. I was barely even shot at the whole time. It did take a bit though, just because of the Mythic Skull and enemies being tanky. Me and my new dinosaur friends pushed inside where we killed more brutes. I had to take out a couple hunters without a shotgun, which took forever, but just involved dodging the same attacks over and over. At one point, Arbiter tried to solo them. He got destroyed, but I appreciate the effort. And then I realized there was a shotgun outside, and that made this fight a lot easier. We killed more brutes, fought a pack of Butterfrees, and dealt with camo brute firebenders. Unfortunately, they were also paired with the worst chieftain of all, a turret chieftain. Unfortunately for him, he doesn't like the fire either. Right as Mr. White Elite is about to kill the Prophet of Truth or something, a Brethren moon appears and sends chunks all over the place to carry Flood. But much like Floodgate, they're fine to deal with. This first fight I just ran past too, I didn't even kill him. I killed a few going back the way we came from, then it was once again tank time. Much like the earlier tank section, this was also really easy. Take it slow and steady like a tortoise. Just don't run into any alligators. I got another Hornet and ran into 2 Scarabs scarabs, I repeat 2 scarabs, which I attempted to do all cool like by parking on top of the first scarab. My first attempt though, the hornet fell off and I got wrecked. My second attempt, I got out of the hornet and immediately walked off the edge like an idiot. But as my aunt once said before yet another marriage, third time's a charm. With the first scarab destroyed, I focused on the other enemy vehicles around until the second scarab was completely isolated, which made it easy pickings. Jafarbiter and I ran into the control center or whatever. Miranda died in one of the dumbest cutscenes in the franchise, and the Flood teamed up with us to kill General Shepard. We fought our way across the bridge, nothing much to talk about, until we reached the Prophet of Truth, who grows some tentacles in his face. What is bro doing? So Arbiter does him like Han Solo. The Flood betray us, and the coolest shot in the game happens. As far as the fight back out goes, there weren't any pure forms. I don't think I need to elaborate further. I walked through a door at one point and found the Flood running a train on Arbiter. Robots who definitely won't also betray us showed up to help, and that was that. Meanwhile, Chief still has one itis and sees Cortana, so he follows her only to find the rebuilding Halo 1. Oh my god. 11209 Covenant, by the way. But before worrying about the rebuilt Halo, we have to go back to High Charity for the best level in the entire franchise, called Cortana. In all seriousness, besides just being an awful level, this is the hardest level by far on regular Legendary, so I wasn't looking forward to this at all. I did know where to get a sword right off the bat. If you walk around this way, it takes you up top and there's a sword. This level also had me deal with Gravemind and Cortana constantly talking, which is kind of cool the first time you play and then horribly annoying every time after. Elite Flood, by the way, are the worst non-pure forms because most of them have shields that refuse to go down. Even not playing LASO, sometimes it'll just take forever. I don't know if it's a bug or what. After clearing the first Flood wave, I pushed up, and the speedrun thing usually here would be to basically just run past everyone, which I thought there was no way I could do, until I attempted it and was barely even shot at and made it through. Good thing too, because that room has a ton of range forms usually and is awful. It appears that Cortana's gone deep into the danger zone, boys. There's a few Flood here that I could easily run past, and then it was time for the next main room, which also sucked, and this time I had to actually clear it out. It has a lot of pure forms, so I had to cower behind cover and play the long game, which the Flood were not having. They liked rushing me. Thankfully, there were needlers by this spot, so when I did finally clear out the regular Flood and the tanks, I had the loadout needed to get the ranged forms. They're still really tanky, but super combines are their weakness other than swords and grenade sticks. This room was way easier than I expected, and in this room, I also made sure to grab an active camo because this hallway is absolute cancer. But if you have a camo and use it about halfway up, you have just enough time to run past all the enemies. They do this in the speedrun, but this is something that I've been doing before I even knew what a speedrun was. And then it was time for what's lovingly referred to as the Hell Room, where there are a million pure forms who love shooting at you from every direction. My strat was to kill as many as I could as fast as possible before they had time to climb to the ceiling and get set up. This seemed to be a valid strategy, but wasn't without its deaths. However, it was around this time that I realized something major. The Black Eye Skull, as previously mentioned, means your shields only recharge when you melee an enemy. In this room, I realized that all sword attacks, even lunges, apparently count as melees and recharge your shields. So as long as I could just keep swording enemies, my shields would keep recharging. This room still took me several minutes, but this was a godly realization. Like, I was almost blind my whole life, and someone gave me my first pair of glasses. Just insane. Anyway, check out this stick. With that, I made it out of Hell Room and into the reactor room where I sorted everything as much as possible to just keep regenning shields. I found Cortana, who took her sweet time getting up even though there was an army of zombie aliens trying to kill us. And yeah, that was basically it. Blowing up the reactors is easy. I knew what must be done with the sword. There's not too many enemies on the escape. I ran past Flamethrower Arbiter and Rip High Charity in only 37:04. I expected that level to be a multi-hour nightmare. So fun-wise, it was a pleasant surprise. Content-wise, because you psychopaths like watching me be miserable, it was a disappointment. Anyway, Chief and Arbiter are terrible pilots and crash a Pelican on Halo. Ignore me conveniently leaving out that it was horribly damaged. And it was snow time. And y'all thought this video wouldn't be Christmas related. So here's the thing, right? With the battle rifle and sword, it was really easy to kill the Flood. I killed so many with no issues whatsoever. However, at the bottom level of the tower, I ran out of sword. And as far as I know, there are no more swords the rest of the level. At least I didn't find any. So that was a problem, and I started getting wrecked. As easy as Cortana ended up being, this level took me by complete surprise with its difficulty. If I tried to take it slow, the game would just drop in more Flood behind me. When I pushed up, I got wrecked. I had no answer for the tank forms. For me and my dog Arbiter, this was rough. But after 15 minutes into the level, I somehow made it to the top where we had to hold out against even more Flood waves that I was horribly unequipped to deal with. I got lasered by Johnson at one point, which gave me an idea, which was to run up top and camp with him. This turned out to be a horrendous idea. But after jumping back down and doing the fight like a man or cyborg, I was able to fend off the waves and get access to the control room, where 3-4 4-3 Guilty Spark freaks out, lasers Johnson, and there's a glorified cutscene of a boss fight that for some reason when I was a kid I thought was super hard. Literally all you do is laser him a couple times. Young Frog was bad at video games. Anyway, me and the Arbmeister had to now escape before Halo explodes. I learned that Sentinels are OP, and we fought our way through the snowy hills into another room where Sentinels continued to be OP. I got blown up too, and it was Warthog time. Problem being, I had no shields. This was irrelevant my first attempt though, because our deaths were solely due to my inability to drive. It also didn't matter my second attempt, cause yeah. Despite my previous 2 deaths being solely because of my terrible driving, my third attempt I tried something crazy. How do you recharge shields? You get out in the middle of the run and punch a flood. I couldn't get back in the Warthog right away though because Arbiter was in the middle of getting jacked, but after lending a helping hand, somehow I got back in basically unscathed and now had full shields. I know the Warthog run path from this point, so yeah, no more stupid deaths. I made it to the final jump and we were home free. Halo blows up and Lord Hood speaks at a memorial full of duplicate images. The elites plan their invasion of India, and with the 40-minute 38-second Halo, that was it for Halo 3 LASO. Was it as hard as Halo 1 or 2 LASO? Definitely not. Do I ever want to play it again? Also no. I'd rather watch Togo. If you enjoyed this banger of a video, click the one on screen to see another one from me. Thanks to my patrons like always for their support. Goodbye and Merry Christmas. Ho ho ho.